Intro to VBA in Excel. So what is VBA? It stands for Visual Basic for Applications. And it's a Microsoft programming language. So that means it's similar to other Microsoft programming languages, like Visual Basic. And you can also use VBA in Microsoft Access. So it's like a twofer, you know? Kill two birds with one stone. Learn VBA in Excel, and you're ready for VBA in Microsoft Access. So why do I think it's important to teach you some of the basics of VBA in this class? Well, first of all, I think it's a travesty for a college student to graduate without having taken a programming class. Because there's so much to be gained from being able to write simple programs for automation, for analysis, that it's really going to help you guys in your careers to know how to program. I didn't really learn how until I was a PhD student. So I was in my mid-20s when it wasn't my first programming class, but when I really picked it up, I was in my mid-20s, so I suspect most of you are younger than that, and so you're getting a head start on me, all right? So you're not too old to learn. Not only that, but programming kind of changes the way you think when you learn how to program. It makes you more analytical. You see, you set out to create this large software program, application, or whatever. Maybe not large, but it doesn't, you don't know how it's going to work, but you know you can do it. So what you end up doing is you end up breaking down the big problem into small steps, and learning how to do that is a skill that can be applied to any big problem. Just identifying the small steps and then solving them each one at a time is an important skill, and something that will benefit you for the rest of your lives. So since you are accountants, you'll most likely, with 95% certainty, be using Excel all the time. And so VBA is the most powerful component of Excel and will help you in your productivity at work. Also, VBA is conveniently installed on all the school computers because it comes with Excel. Okay, you don't have to install anything extra. It even comes on Mac computers that have Excel. So my first year teaching this class, I thought it would be great if students learned some VBA in Excel, VBA in Access, Python, and some other open source program that I was interested in sharing. And since we weren't in a computer lab, I was relying on the students to use their own laptops, and it was a horrible mess. Because, first of all the students with Macs couldn't install Microsoft Access because there's no Mac version. And then when they were dealing with Python, they kept having different issues. So half the class couldn't get it to work, and all the problems they were having were different. So I ended up troubleshooting technical problems with student computers more than I was teaching in the class. It was really horrible. So I settled on just teaching VBA and Excel, and it's been really great. So what can be done with VBA? You can analyze data. You can budget and forecast. Like Access, there are capabilities to create forms, so create documents, create reports. You can develop visualizations for your data. So this is just a small sample of what can be done with VBA. You could use VBA to write a video game. You know, if you like video games, that's what you said. You said you like video games. So I give you permission to play video games in class if you wrote it yourself. Okay. So VBA is great for automating tasks that you perform frequently. So this idea of creating reports for your boss or supervisor. If you do it once and decide that you'd like to automate the process, if not the whole process and part of the process, then you can write a VBA script to help. Also, if you have to do something very repetitive, have you guys ever recorded a macro in VBA? I think you did in your one of your introductory classes. Well, a macro is VBA code. So when you're recording a macro, you're doing things in Excel, and Excel is generating the code so that you can play that code again and repeat the steps in order to be more efficient. So VBA is great for automating repetitive steps. VBA is really cool because you can create your own worksheet functions. So you guys probably use the sum function, the average function, the VLOOKUP function, the random function. And let's say there's one you want specifically for your job, right? That you want to use in your worksheet and you want to share with colleagues perhaps. Then it's really easy to create one in VBA. And then, like I said, you can create complete applications like a video game, but more likely you can also create new icons in the ribbon at the top to open your applications with dialog boxes, on-screen help, etc. So what are some of the advantages of VBA? Well, you can program Excel to execute a task in exactly the same way every time, okay? Even if you program it and your program has mistakes in it, it'll still do everything exactly the same way every time. Of course, since it's a program, it will execute the task much faster than could be done manually. Let's say you were very careful with writing your code, you can perform a task without errors. Okay? It's easy to share VBA code, so you can set up a task that, so everyone can perform it. And you can link the code to a simple user interface with buttons, checkboxes, and things like that. So one thing I've done a lot of is I've written code to help automate part of one of my classes, my AIS class that I teach, and I have to make sure the other professor can use the code, so there's buttons, there's text boxes, there's menus and everything. Okay, also VBA gives you the ability to do things that are otherwise impossible in Excel, like make video games and other more useful things. So some of the disadvantages, which are more kind of hurdles than disadvantages of VBA, are that first of all, you have to learn how to program in VBA, right? Otherwise, it's not useful. VBA in Excel only runs if you have a copy of Excel, which every for-profit company should have. When you're programming, things go wrong all the time. So parts of VBA are still a mystery to me. It's still a huge programming language. I don't understand all of it. So if I make a mistake, I have to go, if there's an error, I have to go look up and see how that error came to be. I have to debug it. And with VBA, there are, multiple ways to accomplish the exact same task, or even there are multiple functions that do the exact same thing. So sometimes you know how to do something, and then you look up online and see that another piece of code does the exact same thing, and it gets confusing. Okay, it's not always pretty, but VBA works. Also, VBA can change with upgraded versions of Excel. So if you're writing code for Excel 2013, chances are, if you try to run it in Excel 95 or whatever it's called, then you might have some issues, compatibility issues. But I don't think it's a very big problem. Most people are up to the more current versions of Excel. Okay, any questions so far? All right. So, VBA is coded in what's called a module. So a module holds the VBA code. And the VBA code itself is called a macro. And you can write the code in what's called the Visual Basic Editor. And I will show you this here in a few minutes. So VBA modules consist of sub-procedures, okay? So all the code is written in a procedure. And there are a couple types of procedures we'll talk about. So one is called a sub-procedure. So you give the procedure a name. In this example, the name is called Add 'em Up. And Jose, what do you think this procedure does?
Automatically add something.
Okay, it does add something. Do we know what it adds? It adds 1 plus 1, and it puts the answer in what's called a variable called sum. So what is the value of sum?
2.
Yes. I knew you belonged in this class. So this message box function will make a message box pop up with the text. The answer is, then you put this and sign that concatenates the number to the text. So it will say the answer is 2. And then that's the end of the sub procedure, and that's VBA code. Okay? Very simple, but we start by drinking milk before we get to eat the meat. So there's another type of procedure, and I alluded to this, and it's called a function procedure. Now these are the procedures that add worksheet functions to your Excel worksheets, okay? So functions are different than subs in the way that functions are forced to sort of return an answer because they work in a worksheet. So the name of the function is the variable that holds the result that would display in a worksheet if you were to use it in a worksheet. You don't have to use functions in worksheets. So this function has, unlike the add 'em up procedure, this function has 2 arguments or 2 parameters. In order to run this function, you have to have 2 parameters passed into it. And these parameters are just sort of randomly, but kind of, it makes sense for programmers to call the parameters arg1, arg2, first argument, second argument, okay? We could call them whatever. We could call them Omar1, Omar2, okay? Wouldn't matter. So what does this function do, Omar? Okay, I know you know exactly what it does, but you were struggling a little with the terminology. So we'll call these parameters, okay? So this function it adds both the parameters together, and we'll store them in a variable called add2, which is the name of the function as well. So let me show you how that works. Okay, so I'm going to create a blank workbook, and you guys are welcome to follow along. So before I can write any VBA code, I have to enable the developer tab, and it'll appear right here. And wow, that is really washed out. Hold on, guys, I know what to do. Just press the menu button. Wait a minute. All right, just ignore that. All right, let's see. Wow, this is looking worse than when we started. So if I go to reset, let's see what happens. Yes. Oh man, I might get in trouble. All right, I think that's the best we're gonna get. All right. So we have to enable the developer tab. Do any of you have a developer tab? You do? Are you a programmer? No? Not that you know of. All right. Then I can definitely say you're not. Yes. Yeah, for macros, you need to have the developer tab if you want to record a macro. So if you right-click and I'm sorry, I don't know how this works with Macs, but it works. If you right-click in the ribbon and customize the ribbon, then you can add the developer tab. Okay? Okay, so I right-clicked in the ribbon area. This is the ribbon at the top. And I right-click, and I get to this customize ribbon option, where I can add different tabs. So I have this developer tab. Michael, can you help her? And how are our Mac users doing? Omar, you got it? Okay. And, Stephanie, you have a Mac, okay, and you got it. Well, you already had the developer tab. Oh, your right click doesn't work. So what you can do, yeah, you can go into the File menu, go to Options, and customize the ribbon there. All right, I know Omar got it working, so. Yes? Yeah, 2010 is fine. Yep. Get it? This looks like slightly. Looks like you have macros there already. Is this Excel 2007? What if you click on this? Oh, my goodness. Oh, there it is. Found it. Developer. From here, it's the same as mine. Okay. Sorry that that didn't work for you, Ashley. Okay, are we ready? So we were going to look at this. Okay, how to create a worksheet function. And I was going to show you how it works. All right, so I go back, and in my developer tab, I click Visual Basic. So let me show you, and I have a trick to show you even better. Magnifier. All right. Okay, so when you open the VBA editor, you'll see this Project Explorer will show you the open workbooks and worksheets that you have. So a VBA module can be programmed within a sheet, and it will apply for that sheet only. It can be programmed within a workbook, and it'll apply to that workbook. But I want to program in a module that will apply to any open workbook. Okay? Any open workbook can use this code. So I don't always want to do this. There's different reasons for wanting to program at the workbook level or the sheet level. So if I click on Insert, Module, okay, you should get a new module. It'll open the coding window where I can write my code, okay? So I'm going to write this function, and you guys can follow along. I think it was called function, and I think that was called add2, and we'll change it a little. We'll call it add3. Add3. And in order to add 3 items, we'll use 3 parameters. And I'll call them, just so you know, they don't have to be called arg1. I'll call it par1 for parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3. I hit enter, and it adds the end function line for me. Now, it's a good habit when you start coding to make things look pretty in your code, so it's easy to read and easy to debug. So I like to tab in one. It doesn't change anything, but I tab in one. I just like to indent when I write the code inside the function. And in a function, you take the name of the function, and that becomes your variable that stores whatever result is going to show up, okay? So we'll say add3 is equal to, what do you think? John, what do you think I should put here? That's right, par1 plus par2 plus par3. Yeah, any questions about this so far? Stephanie. Sometimes Excel will put the spaces in for you. So if I delete that one, it will put it back. Sometimes spaces are necessary. Yeah. Good question. So let's try and run this function. See what happens. So click on the Excel icon. Is one way to go back to your spreadsheet. Now we want to add 3 things together. So let's type 3 numbers. How about 3, 5, and 7? And in one of our cells, we can run the function. Say equals add3 then 1, 2, 3. See if it worked. Let's see, 3 plus 5 plus 7. Yeah, that's 15. Okay, it worked. All right, guys, there's so much more to know. Isn't that exciting? So VBA manipulates objects. It's an object-oriented programming language. And Excel has some nice predefined objects to work with. And you guys are familiar with them, okay? So you can manipulate a workbook. What's a workbook? Yeah, the whole file. A worksheet, which would be a sheet, a tab at the bottom, right, a sheet in the file. A chart, so a graph or something that you insert into a workbook. cell ranges. Okay, you would think that you could manipulate, you would think it'd be called a cell. Like you have workbooks, worksheets, and you have cells, right? Well, the name of those are called ranges. So range A1 would be cell A1. Or range A1 to A10 would be that block of cells. And that's the object that you work with, not the individual cells necessarily. And shapes. I've never worked with shapes, but okay. So objects are arranged in a hierarchy, and I think you guys sort of saw that in the last slide. But what is hard to tell is at the top of the hierarchy is Excel itself, and it's called application. So it's the application object. So you have application, and then under that you have different things, including a workbook, but you could also have an add-in and other things. Within a workbook, you have charts and you have worksheets, okay? And within worksheets, you have ranges. Make sense? Bing, bang, boom, right? It's like my grandfather, then my father, then me, or something. So objects of the same type form a collection, all right? So a collection of workbooks would be like all the Excel files on your computer. And a collection of worksheets would be all the worksheets in a workbook. Same with the charts, all right? This seems so easy. You guys are going to be great. So let's say we're writing a program and I want to refer to a specific workbook on my computer. And the workbook is called book1.xlsx, okay? So how do I write a program and refer to that workbook? Well, if I start at the top of the hierarchy, which was application, which is Excel, okay? Then I go into the workbooks collection and I pass as a parameter the name of the workbook. That refers to my workbook. So it's a little more complex in that usually you would specify the whole path here. You know what that means? It means, for example, I don't know how you do paths on a Mac, but in a Windows, C:/ my documents / Excel files / book1.xlsx, something. So I know Macs have a slightly different path name than a Windows machine. Well, what if you want to refer to worksheet 1 in book 1? Well, you can start with application.workbooks, book1.worksheets, and then sheet 1. So this is a little tidbit you should remember, that worksheets have multiple names, okay? So the first sheet created is always called sheet 1. Even if you change the name of the sheet, it's always called sheet 1. The second sheet would be what? Sheet 2. You get all the easy questions. And so on. Now, if I were to rename sheet 1 to Kevin's budget or something like that, then I could also use that name to refer to the worksheet. So does book 1 have to be actually open in order to manipulate range A1? Yes. Now you can write some code to open it in the first place, so you don't have to click on it, but yeah. Okay, so this is what I was showing you before. You don't have to write all of this out, applications.workbook.worksheet. If you're already working in a workbook and you start here, worksheet sheet 1.range A1, Excel will use the active workbook you're in. So it'll just look for sheet 1 in that workbook. So it's confusing if you have multiple workbooks open, then you need to be careful. If you know, if you're in sheet 1 and you just want to say range A1, then Excel will take it'll take the active worksheet that you're clicked in, okay, and it'll use that as A1. So if you definitely want sheet 1, then you need to go refer to A1 this way. If you just want the A1 in the workbook you're in, then just type range A1. So if I were to say range A1 values equal to, all right, Olay, without an accent. So this will just do the, and run it in active sheet. So if I run it here, Olay, if I change the sheet, go back, run it, Olay there. Got it? Okay. Okay. So objects have properties. So properties are like characteristics of the object. So the range object has a property called value, and that's the value in the range. It also has a property called address, which would be like C1, the address of the range. Range objects have lots of properties. Chart objects have properties. So has title is a Boolean property. It's true or false. So if the chart has a title, it's true. If it's false, then we'll write some code that says, is it false? Then let's add a title. So VBA can be used to view and change properties. So this is how you refer to the property of an object. You just add another dot and then the name of the property. So it's like you keep drilling down, right? You've got the object. Now let's look at its properties. Let's look at the characteristics of the object. And you saw me do this. You saw me use the dot value before. So I can say range A1 dot value equals 5. I'm changing the value property of the range object. When you're coding and you add dots, you can see a list of all the properties. It usually you'll see a list of properties pop up, so you can see what the properties of the object are. So here I am assigning the value property of range A1 to some variable called interest. Or another way, I could just say interest is equal to 0.05. Or I could take, I can take the interest in this cell, the value of this cell, and make that the interest. So this is a variable called interest. I haven't explained variables much, but you can create variables that store values, text, and property settings like value. Objects also have methods, which are like actions or functions, but we already used the word function for something. So, yes, Annika. Oh yeah, all these slides will be available. So objects have methods. So for the range object, one method is clear contents. So this is an action that is performed on the object. What do you think it does? It clears it. It'll delete everything in that range. Okay. So methods or actions are referred to in the same way that properties are. You just add a dot and then put the name of the method. So if I were to type this in and run it, everything from cell A1 would be deleted. Okay? So, VBA is a fully functional, modern programming language that includes variables, arrays, looping, other program flow methods. So you can write code that does incredible things. Any questions on what we did before we start coding? By now, you have all enabled the developer tab, except for Ashley, because she has
2008.
Excel 2008, and you can't really program in VBA in Excel 2008?
So I'm trying to get a new version right now.
Oh, great.
It's going really bad.
Well, maybe over the weekend you'll have more success. But luckily, we have 4 more classes in the computer lab, right? And I wish all of our classes were in the computer lab. But on those days, we'll all have the same version of Excel. So in the developer tab, there are different icons, okay? So on the left-hand side of the tab, you'll see the code icon group, where you'll see the Visual Basic icon. And you already know that if you click on that, you'll enter the Visual Basic editor. There is also a macros icon, where you can view, run, or edit the macros on your computer. So remember, in VBA, all code you write is referred to as a macro, okay? The code is called a macro. But you can record macros, or you can write your own macros. The record macro icon is used to record macros, which what that does is if you push the record macro button, then everything you do in Excel gets copied to code, like click here, sort here, create a chart there. Code is created for all of that until you stop recording. And then the code is saved into a module that you can go in and look at. You can look at the code you record. Did you know that? You knew that already. Well, one thing that's nice about that is if you don't know how to do something in VBA, sometimes you can just record a macro doing the thing you want to program, and then you can go look at the code that was generated when you recorded the macro, and then insert that code into your own code, if you want to do that. So there's this Use Relative References icon. So when you're recording macros, let's say you click, let's say you start, you're clicked in cell A1, okay? You start recording. Then you move to cell A3. Then you do something. Then you stop recording. If you don't use relative references, then you'll always move to cell A3 no matter where you start in your program. If you use relative references, then you'll just move 2 cells to the right. Okay, this is the Visual Basic editor. This is the code window where you write code. Here's the project explorer, I guess, where you have the different workbooks and worksheets and modules. And this down here is the immediate window, which we'll be using today. So in the immediate window, you can test your code rapidly. So you can write commands in the immediate window, or when you're writing your code, you can print stuff out into the immediate window. Let's say you don't always want to print something out to the workbook or the worksheet to see if it worked. You can just print something out to here and see if it worked. Okay, in the View menu, you can toggle which windows are appearing. So let's say you close the code window or something and you want to view it. You can always view the code window by double-clicking on your module. Okay, so view object, I think that'll take you back to, so if you're coding in a worksheet and you click view object, it'll take you to that worksheet. So this is the project explorer, the immediate window. There's also a locals window and a watch window, which are great for debugging, and we'll start with debugging today. So in the insert menu, you can insert a new procedure. So if you like to write a sub or a function and you like the template to be put there for you, you can use this little wizard here. You can insert user form, which is kind of neat. So it's an easy way to put buttons, text boxes, check boxes, radio buttons. A nice form for users. And it's kind of like in a Microsoft Access when you build a form. You can insert a module, which we have done, which will give you code that will work on any open workbook. And a class module lets you build your own objects. Like objects like a workbook has, remember it has properties and methods. You can build your own objects with properties and methods in a class module. Okay, so here's the debugging menu, and we'll go through that a little later. So how do you run your code? So you put the cursor somewhere inside your code, and you can either push that little play button here, or you can go in the run menu and press the play button. Sometimes your code will break, and you can't fix it until you basically stop the code. You hit reset, basically. So to do that, you can hit the little stop button in the run menu, or hit the stop button if it's already in the toolbar. All right, and the edit menu has find and replace, cut, copy, things like that. Paste. Right, so you're ready now. You're ready to be initiated into the wonderful world of VBA programmers. So write your first program, and it's okay to copy, except put your own first name here and your own last name here. Well, let's go ahead and copy it and run it, and then we'll discuss how it works. Well, n sub comes at the bottom. Again and again and again. Well, go ahead and just delete all the ones you don't need. And then so you'll need one. You need one. So you program in between the sub and the n sub. Yeah. That's a good question for your very first program. Capital letters do make a difference. Yeah, so the first time you write it, you have to write it again the same way. So in my version of Excel, it'll correct that for me. It might for you too, probably does. I don't know about the Mac. Got it working? Oh, good. Just make sure it's exactly like it is up there. Yes. Did you stretch or raise your hand?
Oh, I didn't get the box that you got at the bottom, and if it gives me any sub.
Okay, so this should be called See the first line up there?
Oh, it's sub first one.
And then put end sub at the bottom. So delete this one. Got to delete that one.
Delete this one,
Yeah, and and replace it with the name of the sub. Sub. You'll have to. Oh, don't worry about that. Yeah. I'm gonna sit here and make sure it works. Program. And does it require any parameters? No. That's why there aren't any. And the name, so I create a variable called first name. I could have called it fname. I could have called it ABCD. Doesn't matter. And I put Kevin here. And then I put a comment. I don't know if you guys tried this. So this is the comment character, an apostrophe. VBA ignores that. It doesn't count as code. But it's nice to put in your code to tell people to do things. Or usually it's to kind of give yourself an idea of what you just did. Explain how the code's working in that part, what it's for. So comments, use them liberally, all right? Last name, Moffitt. Full name. Okay, so here's where I want you to change the code a little. So this is fine, how it's written. It says full name, which would adds the first name plus a space plus the last name. You guys got it? You figure out how that works? So the word, this plus symbol, it's what it does is it'll take two strings. Strings are the letters and numbers that you're not going to multiply them or anything. It's called a string. So you take two strings and you want to stick them together. That's fine. Use a plus. So here it's sticking a space next to a first name, next to a last name. Fine. But if, let's say first name was actually a number, okay, it wasn't a string, it's like a 5. Then it would try to be adding a 5. It'd be trying to do an actual add operation, a 5 plus a space, which means nothing. It'll give you an error. So instead, you can use and. And what and will do is it treats everything as a string. So even if this is a 5, it'll just get stuck to a space and it won't cause an error. So if you want to put and here, it's a little safer. Someone in the last class had a bug and this was the problem. They were trying to add a number and a letter. Didn't work. Okay? So a debug.print puts the answer in the immediate window. So if you can't see your full name, it's because your immediate window is not open. To open it, you just go to View, Menu, and go to Immediate Window. Is there anyone who couldn't get this to run? So everyone wrote their first program? So you're all initiated. Excellent. You are a geek. All right. So for your second program, I want you to edit your first program. Okay.
Quick question. I know you said there's no parameters necessary, so you're still required to put in those parentheses at the end of them?
I don't know if it'll add them in for you. Let's say I don't have that. It'll put it in for you. Okay. Yeah, they're required. Which is pretty standard fare for programming. You know, you just put nothing in the parentheses. All right, so here I want you to change, see the full name line? Change it to that. And then run it. All right. What happened? Ahmed. Okay. Was it the exact same way? Oh. So, anyone have a different name print? All right. I didn't. Right. That's your username on the computer. So, when you guys first register, when you first run Excel or Microsoft products, then you have to give like a username. So it stores that, and you can get access to it by going, remember, application is Excel, and one of the properties of Excel is the username. So that's what it printed out. So it's a property, right? Property of the Excel object. Yeah? Okay. Now, some people were like, well, does that mean these 2 lines of code are ignored because we're not using them here? Well, they're not ignored, it's just we're not doing anything with the first name and last name. They're just variables holding your first and last name, but we didn't print it out or anything, you know. So the code still works fine. Okay, here's the third one. Go ahead and edit. So instead of the debug line, do this line. Out of memory. You might have to restart your computer or something, or restart Excel. Is this an old computer? So what does this do? Vianney, is that right? Yeah. In which worksheet? In the active worksheet, yeah. Did it work? Yeah. Okay, everyone got it working? Mike? Range A1 equals full name? I don't know, try it.
Well, it does the same thing.
Oh, did it do the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then it's taking a shortcut. Yeah. Did you put A1 in quotes? This, oh, the space between the dot and the parenthesis? Yeah. Yeah, no space with the dots. It worked? Okay. All right, here's a new one. So change this range A1 to this message box. Oops, sorry. All right. Did you get that working, Jose? So there are more opportunities for mistakes here. Alan, you got it? So this is what happens. This causes a message box to appear with this kind of scary message from your computer. So put your name there, and here at the end of the line, if you put a space and an underscore, it will allow you to continue to type on the next line, but it will treat it as one line. So I wanted this long message to be tighter and not one long line, so I spread it over 3 lines by putting a space and an underscore here and a space and an underscore here. Did that work for everybody? Almost? Did you get that, Ahmed? No? Stephanie? Okay. So how come you guys, when something works, it works for both of you, but when it doesn't work for both of you? Because one of you is just copying. And Annika? You see, you have to be very precise because the computer is going to do exactly what you program it to do. And if there's a syntax error, then you're in trouble.
So if I wrote this on somebody's Excel, it show up every time he or she opens Excel?
This will show up every time. Now wait a minute. You want this to show up every time someone opens Excel?
Does it work this way?
You can make it work that way. That's kind of sneaky of you. But how are you going to get someone else to put this code on their machine? You have to write a virus. Send an email attachment that when they open it, and it corrupts their machine and puts scary messages all over the place.
What chapter do we learn about that?
I'll have to come up with a good example. All right, so you got it working, and you two? Now it works for both of you. And Jose? And does your computer work now? Still having memory errors?
I don't know why all mine work at the same time.
Look, this has to be on a different line. And then space underscore go there at the end. So the space underscore at the end is like a line continuation thing.
Okay.
So you can, so it looks nicer this way.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, now run it. Okay. All right. Okay, this is where I made that mistake. Okay, we're skipping 5 because it's the same as 6. 4, I mean, so here's 6. So there are changes all over the place in these 2 areas. It's breaking it. Oh. Oh, it didn't? That's funny. Wonder if that happened to anyone else. Anyone else finish? This is where it was, right? Sorry. I could. All right.
Throw it in the trash. No one's
I don't know if it should go in the trash. Yeah.
How do you make this to go like down?
Hit enter. Just hit OK.
Oh, okay.
Got it? Okay. Got it? You got it? So, did the smiley face appear in your box? Okay. Something's wrong with Ashley's computer. Oh, did you click yes? Did it work? They should both work. All right. How about there in the back? You got it work? Oh, you did get it because you clicked on. You kept clicking yes. Okay. Well, we'll talk about how this works. Right, Alan, you're working on it. John, still broken? Do you have a computer? Do you have a computer at home? Well, there are always computer labs here. All right, there in the back. You got it, Annika? Oh yeah, it's. Do you want to sit closer? Yeah, this is higher level than C++, so I'm not a C++ programmer. I've tried to learn it on my own. I needed to take a class, though. It's kind of different. Oh, yeah. This, I mean... Yeah, well, I'm glad you think so. Yeah, that's right. Well, it might depend on your editor. Hmm? Hmm. Visual Studio. It's got C++ on it. All right, guys, so Summer, are you done? Well, even if not, let's just go ahead. Gianni, what's going on here? Oh, you have an error. Oh. Well, we're going to work on debugging, so sit tight. So, Jose, you got it working? Wow. All right, Ashley, what's going on?
So you're basically getting a message box.
Yeah.
The program doesn't come up as a message box, and then gives you the option to click yes or no. And then depending on if you click yes or no, you're going to get a different message box that appears.
Yeah. Can you see how that works? Why does it work that way? Yeah, so this parameter, this is a parameter. So in message box, the very first parameter is the message that you pass in, okay? The next parameter is optional, right? And it's called VBS no, which turns the message box into like lets you have two options, right? Yes or no. And then, depending on what you click, it stores that value in this variable called message value. So then we write this if statement to see what the value of message value is. It says if it's VBS, then put this message box, this will be easy. Otherwise, if message value is no, then give this message box, that's what they all say. End if, end sub. Make sense? Okay. So, some of you are having problems with your code, and that's perfect, because next we're going to talk about debugging. So what you might want to do is hit the stop button in your code if you're having an error. And I want all of you to put your cursor in your code, okay? But don't press the play button. Instead, press F8. And I don't know what it is on a Mac. Is it F8? It's supposed to step through your code one line at a time. So go to the debug menu. Yes. What's the shortcut? Oh, it's go back to the debug. What's that? A shift? No, that's a control. Keep hitting it keep hitting it over and over again. Oh, you ran the whole thing. Hit it again. Yeah, the exact same thing. Oh, why did it run the whole thing? Anyway, under the debug menu, if you hit step into, what is this up arrow?
This is this. So then
And what is this command button?
this one here.
And what is this?
That's apparently
That thing? Yeah.
And then what if I want to go is step over like
Not the backslash, that's the up. That's the vertical bar. So you might have to push shift as well. Well, I don't know. So step into goes into line by line. Step over might skip a line. I don't know. So sometimes you don't know where your code is breaking, but as long as you can step into it and go line by line, you know, that part is fine. Yeah.
So after I start
Okay, this is a compile error, so it can't even compile. So this is a Q, it should be a G, or is that a G? See, this is a Q, it should be a G. It has MSQ, it should be MSG. Okay, you got yours over there? Okay. Did it help you debug your code?
I debugged it like it worked before, so.
Okay. Now another thing you can do is you can cause your code to run up into a certain point by setting a breakpoint. So let's say you don't want to step through 1,000 lines of code. You just want it to stop in one spot. Set a breakpoint. So I'll show you how to set a breakpoint. It's really easy. So I can set a breakpoint by just clicking right there on the side On off, toggle on off. So what a breakpoint does is it'll run this code. It'll stop here before it runs this line. Now, that can be useful, but even more useful is to view the locals window while you're doing all of this. So the locals window shows all the variables that your code works with, and it shows you their current value. Okay? So at the beginning of your program, full name might be empty, but go in a few lines and your full name will have a value. So I want you each to view the locals window by going to the view menu. Go to view, locals window. All right. Now, I have a different little program here that I'm running than you do, but it all works the same. So let's say I run this subroutine. I hit F8. All right. Here's the locals window. It sees I have a variable called answer in this procedure. Answer. And it's empty right now. That's the value. So I'll hit F8 again. Still empty because it's looking at this line before the line is executed. It has to run the add3 function. Okay, now I have 3 parameters in the add3 function. And they all have values because 1, 2, 3 come from here. See that? So let's go back to F8. All right. All right. Now my answer variable has a value of 6 because it used this add3 function to give a value of 6. And so on. Okay. So I could just run this program and it'll stop at the breakpoint and say the answer is 6, or I could step in one by one. But the locals window is great for debugging. You know, usually if you know what the values are of the variables you're working with, then you can see what's going on in your program. And you can see, oh, okay, it's not supposed to be this. Here's where I made the error. I can go fix it. So yeah, locals window, very handy. So why don't you guys try opening the locals window on your own computer and stepping through your program and watching the values change if you haven't done that yet. Okay? All right. Okay, so there's also something called the watch window. And what the watch window does is it shows you the watches you've set. So a watch, it's like watch with your eyes, not a watch on your wrist. And what you're doing is you're looking for a certain value. So if a variable gets to be a certain value, then the your watch could stop the program at that point. Okay? So this can be useful in some situations, and here's one situation. So go ahead and create a new sub under the one you've been working on, and type this in. Let me make it bigger. So type that in. Anyone get an answer? Maybe an error? Everyone gets an error? Or a zero? Error? Zero? Which one? You got a zero or an error? Oh, you got 13 as an error? Okay. So one thing that this sub is doing is it's looking at the values in your cells A1 to A20. So delete everything there in the current worksheet. And then you should be able to get it, remove an error. Maybe you'll get a zero instead. You got the zero? Okay. So what this is doing is, I'll explain in more detail, but in a nutshell, it's taking all the numbers in A1 to A20, squaring them individually and adding them up, and message boxing the sum. All right, so here are some new things with this program. So here is something new, dim counter as long. So I'm declaring a variable before I give it a value. And I'm telling what type of variable it is. It's a long type. A long is a number, a very big number, but it's a number. But a double is double a long, or more than, maybe 4 times. maybe more. It uses twice the memory. So a long takes 4 bytes of memory. So if you need a big number, you use a long. If you need a very big number, you use a double. It takes 8 bytes of memory. So back in the day when memory was very constrained, there are lots of constraints with memory, you would always make sure you're using the appropriate number type to use the least amount of memory. So the smallest would be like a 0 or 1. It takes 1 bit. That's like a Boolean, 1 bit. Integer only takes 1 byte, which is 8 bits. And it gives you only 256 numbers. But longs and doubles are, millions. Anyway, so dim, the name of the variable, the type of the variable. Okay, here's another variable that wasn't not dimmed, but it's a sum. Oh, this one was dimmed. Yeah, it's right there. So we're setting that to 0. And we have this for loop here. And the way this works is it says for counter equals 1 to 20. So what that does is each time through the loop, it'll go 20 times, because 1 to 20 is 20. And the first time through the loop, counter will have a value of 1. The second time, counter will have a value of 2, all the way up to 20, then the loop will be over. So it says cell value, some variable, is equal to, so here's a different way to refer to a cell. It's by the coordinate system. So counter is equal to 1, so 1 comma 1 means the first row, first column. So which is A1, but so it takes the value of the cell, first row, first column, sets it equal to here, and then the sum of squares, which is equal to 0 right now, is set to the current value of sum squares plus the value of the cell it's looking at squared. So it goes to the for loop again, where counter is equal to 2. So now cell value is set equal to the cell second row, first column, which would be A2. Takes that value, squares it, and adds it to the sum of squares. And it goes all the way through for 20 times. So go ahead and in cells A1 to A20, add some numbers, okay? And then run the procedure again. You don't even have to fill them all out. You can just do the first 5, whatever. Get something? Huh? Yeah, so you did it. It worked. It's working? Okay. Okay, now let's do something. Let's set a watch, okay? So go into debug, add watch. Okay, and we're going to say, what is it called? Cell value. Yeah. Cell value is equal to, oh, I'm sorry. Let's do counter is equal to 15. And when this is true, we want the program to break, like stop. Stop at that point. Okay, so of course I don't have the program here, you guys do. So now that you have a watch, this watch window pops up. Now run your program and see if it stops when counter is equal to 15. Did it stop? Did it stop? Yours didn't stop. Did you set a watch? Let me see. Oh, there you did. Yeah, that's right there. Or you can actually edit this one if you click on right click on it or something. Command click. Is that how you right click? Oh, 2 fingers? Double click. Oh, there you go. Edit. Counter is equal to 15. Is that the name of your variable? Counter? Or is it capital C? Counter.
Equals 50.
Well, 15. So yeah. Now run it. Let me see. It still didn't break it. Well, go back to your edit your watch again. What happens when it's equal to 15? It's supposed to break. So.
Value string.
Okay, now do it. Now run it. Wait, how are you running this? Stop it. Okay. Why is it message boxing? Expression not defined in context. Well, that's weird. I don't know what that means. Well, that's weird. So what did you do on yours? Because his isn't working on his Mac.
Did debug and then I did add a watch and I just put in counters equals 15 and changed.
Yeah, just what I said, huh?
Yeah, and then I was on the wrong thing first, but make sure you're clicking this one and run it. It should just stop and switch to cell value before.
Right. $38. Whoops. 235. Enter. How do you go down? You have to click it every time?
I think the arrow would work. I guess not.
Oh, whatever. Wow, it should have worked. Okay, now let's change things up a bit. So put a letter in your column, something that shouldn't square. Put a letter, like A or B. And then in your watch window, so if you right click on this and you can edit your watch, instead of counter equals 15, what we're going to do is we're going to check the type of the value. Okay, is it a string? Is it an integer or whatever, right? So let's say type name, and let me zoom in here. Type name of cell value is equal to string. It's going to check and see if it's a letter. So if the cell value in your code is a letter, it'll be type string, and then it should break when the value is true. So wherever you typed that string, the code will break, okay? All right, and then try it and see if it works. And if you have your locals window open, well, I guess the watch shows you the value as well, right? The watch window shows you the value of the variable. No? Well, open the locals window then. And did it stop your program? It did? Good.
What if you were typing in like hex and you wanted the letters to like count as numbers? What would you do for that?
You'd have to convert the hex to a number before you squared it and added it up.
There's no possible way to do it once the hex.
I don't know. But you can use a hex conversion function first too. So that's kind of a odd thing to ask. No, but I think you're right. To deal with that, I would convert it to an integer, but I don't know if hex is an object type. I mean, a type, it doesn't seem like I've ever seen that as a type of variable where you could say, this is hex. So there's a list of the types of variable in your book on page 97, and I know hex isn't there. There's like 8 different number types. Like there's also Boolean, date, object, string, and variant. Variant is a type that changes depending on the value you give the variable. Okay, good.